Now, as I said earlier, the Australian's reporting today that a new razor gang is going to be appointed by the Albanese government to slice into billions of dollars of infrastructure spending. These cuts won't feature in next week's budget. The budget's next Tuesday, and this committee will not report until August. And guess what? Labor election promises on any project that was promised during the campaign, they won't be touched. Now, can I just remind everyone, we're 3 weeks away from the anniversary of the election of the Albanese government on the 22nd of May last year. You've got to ask yourself the question, what the hell have they been doing for the past 12 months? So how are they now going to decide what to cut or not to cut? I can give you a bit of a tip. National Senator for Victoria and Shadow Minister for Infrastructure, Bridget McKenzie, joins us on the program now. Thanks very much for your time. Why this committee now, and why has it not been sitting and looking at these things for the last 12 months while the Albanese government's been in charge?
Well, Steve, it's an excellent question. We heard prior to the October budget last year that they'd gone through this intense process over many months, looking at the infrastructure projects and programs right across government, and then made significant decisions to cut over $10 billion worth of critical projects right across the country. And now we find ourselves 1 week from the budget and they're announcing another review because the PM got rolled in National Cabinet with the Premiers, and, probably Catherine King got rolled in ERC as she headed into the budget to try and get control and rein in on the recurrent structural issues within the budget. And instead of making the tough decisions that have to be made at this point in time, they've taken a very lazy way, a very Labor way, and they've taken the axe to critical infrastructure projects, road, rail, bridges in our suburbs, our cities and out in the regions.
Yeah, as a Nat, I'll ask you in a moment about how fearful you are of the impact on the bush. But look, typically the government blames the coalition. They say you were world champions at pork barrelling, and many of these projects that are currently, in the pipeline as opposed to started were projects that you jammed into safe coalition seats. Is there any truth to that claim?
Steve, we are very proud of a 10-year infrastructure pipeline of $120 billion that we put in place to actually give certainty to that planning, design and construction pipeline, which is a reality with large and small projects. And our local councils, state governments and community groups were the beneficiaries of that. Right now, we've got construction businesses waking up this morning who had planned with their workforce, their engineers, their architects, etc., on purchasing kit, on setting themselves up for different phases of that pipeline, now not knowing for at least 3 months whether the project they tendered for or planned to build is actually going to go ahead. And that is going to leave grave uncertainty in our business community and our construction industry more broadly. When it comes to investing in our communities, we don't make any apologies for investing right across this country, whether it's Mickleham Road here in the northern suburbs of Melbourne, which services both Western Melbourne and Eastern Melbourne. I think the key about these sort of projects, Steve, is the minister that announces the funding is very rarely the minister that cuts the ribbon. You have to have quite a nation-building and long-term focus on investing in these type of things, which we did. And it's very rarely only the suburb where the construction occurs that the benefits will flow, as you see in many of those congestion-busting road projects out in the outer suburbs of Brisbane, Sydney and Melbourne.
Are they the projects you're most fearful of, or are there other projects in the bush? I mean, when I hear and read, Senator, about bridges and roads, I mean, I've been driving on country roads in central Victoria the last week or so. The amount of potholes I had to dodge was unbelievable. I mean, surely we're not going to hold up those sorts of projects that are going to improve roads in regional Australia, are we?
Well, this is the whole point, Steve. We don't know. We are talking hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of projects potentially up for the gun. And what this government will say is they say, oh, we've just smoothed out the funding timeline, but it'll be funding for start post the next election, and that's just not good enough. It's not good enough, as you say, for the regional roads who've been subjected to unseasonal flooding events over the last 18 months and are just a ruin right along the East Coast. The Inland Rail project, which I had the pleasure to visit out in northwestern New South Wales last week, up in Moree and Narrabri and the like, already delivering economic benefits in those communities. Or whether it's key Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, Perth, Tasmanian, Adelaide projects which are making sure people get home safely from work, make sure our product gets to port efficiently and swiftly, and make sure that our regional freight routes are safe to drive on. This is what's at stake. Now, we invested in productivity delivering infrastructure. This government clearly can't get the settings right with the budget challenges it has, and instead of making the tough decisions around structural issues, it's taken the lazy approach to just cut the infrastructure pipeline, which is actually going to lead to quite long-term issues and a slower recovery for our community and our nation.
I noticed the Prime Minister donned a baseball cap today with the word yes on the front of it at his address at a rally in Queensland today for the Labor Day. I said at the beginning of the program that I thought it was extraordinary. The AFL has sent a memo to its 18 clubs, Bridget, and you're a Victorian, saying that they've got 8 days. It's now 7 days. 7 days to say whether they are going to back the yes vote in the referendum. Is that appropriate?
Well, it sounds a bit like coercion to me. I mean, for the peak body to be writing to presidents of clubs and giving them 7 days for their club to decide on such a significant issue, I think doesn't give them enough time at all. I think we're seeing this referendum question, no matter which side you sit on the question substantively, has the potential to be incredibly divisive. And I don't want to see sporting clubs and our great national code dragged into that. I don't want to see father against son in the spectators. You want them all barracking for the family team. I think it's very, very disturbing. And I think athletes need to stick to their knitting.
Like you, I'm a financial member of the club. Do you think the club's going to come to us and say, are you going to vote yes or no? And do you care, what we say about how you should vote? Well, they should do that, but they won't. I mean, will they? They're not going to send it. They're not going to poll all of us.
No, I can't see, an example of that actually happening in the short time frame that the AFL has given them. It almost seems as if clubs are going to be bullied into the safe position. And I would encourage clubs to keep it classy and stay out of what is actually going to be quite a serious debate in our body politic and needs to be informed by legal and constitutional knowledge and the deep experience, such as we heard of Tony Abbott today at the parliamentary inquiry.
Bridget McKenzie, appreciate your time as usual. Thanks very much for talking to us.